What's up, family? I'm getting ready to take y'all down to the tunnel, right? Drop a little knowledge on y'all, right? Now, if y'all want to go deeper into the knowledge, then visit Mouse 45 up OST. You're going to get, a mind full of knowledge and information that's prevalent for the times that we are presently living in, right? So we getting rid of Africans and African Americans and the Caribbeans and whatnot, right? So see if we can put a little understanding in it. Oh yeah. All right. Let's see. All right, what's up, family? All right, so check it out. It's hot out here, so get this sweat off me. So as I was stating, right, you got a lot of people who are buying into the African American, Caribbean, and African dispute or boycott, and I would just want to shed a little light on it real quick, right? So check this out, right? Now we all been colonized by the same colonizer, whether it be the UK, the Brits, the Belgians, France, Spaniards, at one form or another, all the way to the Philippines, how we've been colonized by these people, right? Now this is the difference. What they call African Americans, melanated people in North America, right, suffered harshly the longest, right, amongst the colonizer, right? Now, we could say that the Spaniards suffered longer because that's where it all started at the fall of the Moors in Spain, right, during the Inquisition, which was it started before 1492, right? But the difference is when the Moors got conquered in Spain, they wasn't stripped of everything at that moment, right? You had millions of Moors who had to leave, millions of Moors and Jews who had to leave Spain. And where did they go? Spain and Portugal. Some of the Moors left Portugal and went to Lagos, Nigeria. That's why Lagos, Portugal is before Lagos, Nigeria. They left Portugal. Some went to Nigeria. These the Moors now. And then came to the Americas, right? But they were Moors, so they wasn't slaves. They was freedmen, right? Meaning they were able to move about throughout, America freely. Okay, now the Africans that they kidnapped, quote unquote, some say they were sold into slavery due to tribal wars and the captors. When a European came, they sold those captors to the Europeans, brought them to the Americas at one point. But you all got to remember too that in 1555, the first slaves that was coming over here, they wasn't kidnapped. They were tricked over here on a slave ship or a ship called Jesus by John Hardy Hawkins. You all can look that up. Okay, now check this out. So the slaves that they brought from Africa, if you go back to the census, you might see in certain parts there were only 16 over here. At the most, each town, right, within the Americas didn't tally to no more than 100 slaves. You had 16 here, 20 there, 23 here, 14 here in these different states, towns, and whatnot, right? The larger numbers came, one, by populating, and two, when they started just incorporating the Moors into the slave numbers, and that's how you got the increase in numbers. Okay, if a black native, right, and a black African
had a baby together, they called that baby a mulatto. If a black native and Moors who came and they had a baby, they called that a mulatto, right? Or if the Siberian natives who were here as well mated with any one of those types, groups, they call that child a mulatto, right? Now, when the Siberians crossed the Bering Straits into the Americas, when the European asked them who built these mounds, the Siberians told them they were built by much bigger and blacker Indians than us, that these mounds, they were already here when the Siberians got here, right? Which lets you know that the melanated Indians that were already here, the Hopi, the Hopi Indians were the ones who were doing the hieroglyphs, mound buildings at the same time around the Egyptians in Africa. Because the North Africa, the Egyptians, the Morocco, the Moors, all the way through Galveston, through Texas, through Louisiana, from Monroe to Natchitoches to Winfield to Manning, Ruston, and those areas, they always communicating, right? All dealing with each other, right? So when you hear people say, well, this was Egypt too, well, yes, correct, because the Hopi Indian tribe was tied to Egypt. They just was called Hopi. They weren't called Egyptians, right? I guess because you got to remember, Egypt is a Greek word. So at that time, the knowledge of the mound builders and the hieroglyph writers in the Americas wasn't prevalently known to the colonizer, the European. You got to remember, yes, this is what y'all got to remember. The colonizer, aka European or Caucasus or whatever you want to call him, right? He's just now discovering a lot of this knowledge as well. Although he wrote history books, a lot of his information was incorrect because he didn't go deep into the culture to find out what was what. He just scratched the surface, and he was just so much in a hurry to patent something, or trademark something, to say, oh, hey, look what I discovered. That's why the dispute with Columbus discovered America didn't stand, because people were already here. But he just wanted to put his stamp of approval on something, and he was moving too fast, right? So now that the knowledge is starting to come out, it's starting to contradict with previous knowledge that he wasn't privy to, but now it's starting to come up. Now you may ask, well, what about what's going on with the African, the Caribbeans, and the African Americans, right? Okay, let's get into that. Now, the African American know every aggression of racism that there is, because we mastered it because we've been up under it for so long, right? So we know we know this history, right? Now, this is the deal. So when the colonized African, who was colonized by the French, by the Europeans, the missionaries came and taught you about white Jesus, right? And you got some in this Africa, I can't believe, some of them so intimidated and scared, they would not put a black Jesus on their wall. Like Floyd Evans in Good Time. That's where they at today on that. We've been past that, right? I rebuke the white Jesus in the name of the black Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so come on, we finna close. So check it out. Okay, so we know every microaggression. That's what the African don't understand, right? So when they come with that energy and that mindset of the colonizer, and they come to America, we automatically recognize it. Like if, say, you black, you go into the African store and they kind of watch you, or they kind of, they stand offish. And it's not their fault, because they've been taught to be standoffish against black Americans, right? In America, they've been taught that this is a learned behavior, right? Just like just like the colonized black people, and we had a learned behavior where automatically when you saw a white person you would put your head down, or automatically when you saw a white person you would get over on the side of the street, or automatically when you saw a white lady and her children you would automatically open the door but you leave a black woman like she didn't exist. That was a learned behavior. We are unlearning all of this. The whole what do you call that? What do you say? Colorism, light skin against dark skin against light skin. That was a learned behavior. All that was taught by the colonizer, and it took us years, man, to defeat that, get that Willie Lynch syndrome out of our system. Right? We suffer from Willie Lynch syndrome. We suffer from Stockholm syndrome. You name the syndrome under the colonization of the colonizer. We suffer from it, right? So we beating all that off of us today, right? So now that we freed ourselves from that, here come our African brothers and sisters with the colonizers. Not all, because okay, not all, because in Nigeria you have North Nigeria, South Nigeria. One of them is one side is Christian, one side is Muslim. Now the Muslim side of Nigeria, they pretty cool. The men and women on the Muslim side, they laid back. They, what's up, brother? They don't be tripping. Life is good. Everything is okay, right? So that is one aspect of it. But on the other aspect, you have the Christian side of Nigeria, and those are the ones who would come over here with the white Jesus and try to teach the black Christian about Christianity, but you coming with a white Jesus. Had a black church in America, they just not fighting off the image and what was engraved in their mind dealing with white Jesus and the whole Constantine style of Christianity. Not the Gnostics or the Coptics, but the Constantine style, which put blacks as slaves. That whole theology was not for us. That's not our theology. That basically was a westernized European caucus theology that was forced upon us. But as truth started coming in and as knowledge started coming in, then we start to rebel against that, right? That's why you will always hear me thank, right, God for coming in the person of Master W.D. Fraud Muhammad, raising up the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we got our leader, messenger, teacher, and God in the most honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan today, that's keeping the knowledge alive, right? Now let me break that down, right? Because because they taught us spookism. We knew nothing about a mystery God until the colonizers taught us. And all our existence, God has always been walking, talking, what they call an Ishi, as brother, my brother was saying, right? Brother, forgive me. I'm looking at your face. I'm trying to pull you, brother Wesley Muhammad, right? Which means man, right? Okay, and that's from Hebrew, right? Before English translations. And that's in the English translation, from English to Latin, was my man came first, and then the King James by William Tinsdale first, then King James. Okay, so we were lost mentally, physically, spiritually, because they kidnapped us. You got to remember, in America, you got every melanated being gathered in the Americas, right? You got Americans from Africa that came during slave trade. You got black Native Americans that's been here. You got melanated Caribbeans in the Americas. You got melanated blacks that's in America who came here over 16,000 years ago when the tectonic plates were intact. So everybody is right here in America, and we all suffered under the hands of what the colonizer. So why come to America to give this knowledge? Because if you wake up the melanated people in America, you wake up the whole melanated people on the entire globe. That's why the knowledge didn't go into Africa. It came to the Americas. That's why the influence of the blacks in America spreads throughout the entire globe, right? And that presents its own problem. So how? Well, how did they do that? The elite colonizers, some would call it 1%, they didn't like that. So they formulated, I would call them like overseers. You know, in slavery they had the black overseers. Well, they created or allowed a group titled the Boule, right, whose job was to report what was going on with black folks to the elite, right? Well, how was they going to do that? Well, they created, well, then they would spread the colonizers' information to some of these pastors over the congregation. Then these pastors over the congregation would give that to the Divine Nine. The not Divine Nine is your Greek sororities, and then from there it would hit into the school system through the colleges or i.e. high school, and then it hit the streets, and that's how they got their message to us. And people was wondering, man, why we not making any progress? And it's 2025. Why are our neighborhoods looking the same? Why are we still fighting each other? Why it's so easy for them to drop drugs in the community? Why it's so easy for us to fight each other? Why is it so easy for us to shoot and kill each other? Why all the time? Why most gangs start off as community activists and doing positive for the community, and they wind up being robber gangs, killing and shooting each other? What is going on? And they do it all over. The same things happen in Africa. Same things happening in the Caribbean. When you travel the world and you go to the black communities, no matter where you at on this globe, it's the same thing. You're gonna have certain sides of town where they fighting each other. You're gonna have certain sides of town that's gonna look ran down. You're gonna have certain sides of town have a heavy police force. And guess what they all got in common? I'll give you an example. What is that tall statue on that mountain in Brazil looking over the people? White Jesus. The majority of them is under some form of colonized Christianity, right? Majority of them. That's what they have in common. Like what the brothers say. Before the European arrived, we had all the natural resources, and they had the Bibles. He said when they left, we had the Bibles, and they had ownership of all the natural resources. They got duped. Well, Malcolm say you've been had, you've been hoodwinked, you've been run amok. It just, hey, but that was then. Times are changing because, okay, let me give you an example. Why times are changing? You had the Million Man March. The Million Man March echoed all over the globe. From the knowledge of the Million Man March, right, which is getting ready October 16th, this year, 2025, y'all check out Brother Enoch, Hip Hop Detox, and they keeping that spirit alive. Get involved. Just Brother Enoch, Hip Hop Detox, tune in, check it out, see what you can do to support. Okay, so from the Million Man March, right? Then what happened? Y'all remember what happened? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan went on a World Friendship Tour, and he hit the African and Middle Eastern countries, dropping science and knowledge. They received them, right? Because you got to remember, back in the day, they would fight. One Farrakhan tape would cause a uprising in African towns where they start building, doing for self. They growing, they building, they on the move, right? Off of one tape from Minister Farrakhan, right? Okay. Now check this out. This was back in 95, 96. Matter of fact, after the Million Man March, I was at the UN in New York when Minister Farrakhan spoke. Whoo, heavy. Don't you know when the minister spoke in New York at that UN after the Million Man March, that was tuned in around the world because seeds is dropping, seeds is dropping, seeds is dropping, seeds is dropping, right? Now check this out, right? Check this out, right? In Africa, the seeds was dropping so heavy that Africans start taking on that knowledge and they start building. They growing. They seeing what the minister doing, so they are replicating and duplicating it, right? Now they thinking that majority, when they come to America, you got some that got the money that's building. They thinking that the majority of the black Americans is on that timeline. Million Man March, Nation of Islam, Mr. Farrakhan, we building, quick thinking, fast moving, right down to the modern time. We building, we going, let's make something happen. We doing businesses, we are uniting, and we are networking with one another, right? Now, this what y'all gotta realize, Africa. I was there. When Mr. Farrakhan came to TSU and he spoke, you had black pastors picket signs boycotting Minister Farrakhan. When at that time, when you had the FOI on the streets, cleaning up the streets, working, moving, the people, the congregation, not the pastors, the congregation didn't stand up to the pastor and say, leave Farrakhan alone because he's doing better for these communities. They building, they getting out of the penitentiary doing right. They getting off these drugs. They're not selling drugs. They opening up businesses. They wearing suits. They pants is not sagging. Get off Farrakhan. Or let me see what y'all doing with what program y'all got then. You know, it's okay. So you want to move the minister out the way, and let's see you put your program together, and you clean up the streets. Then what you doing? What you got, right? So it's 2025 today. Proof is in the pudding. We see they didn't have nothing, right? Okay. Now, all of this is manifesting itself, right? So either somebody going up or somebody going down, right? And that's just what it is, right? And so we need to find a way to where we can do business. And I'm not talking about kumbaya and holding hands and no. We all need to throw a gathering, which we are gonna throw a gathering coming next year. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a African American, Caribbean, just melanated Moors, Muslims festival in Houston, Texas. I keep y'all posted on the date when we're gonna do that. It's something that needs to be done so we can shake all this, get this all out for us, right? But I do want to sort of tell you all this. Whether America likes Germany, or America likes Spain, or America likes the UK, France, the European countries, they all gonna get along enough to do business. Canada, they all gonna get along enough to do business with each other, right? And understand, put their people and their race first. They got sense enough to do that. So they looking at us like we can't. You mean to tell me about the blacks in America, the blacks in Africa, the blacks in the Caribbean, blacks in Haiti, Jamaican, Brazil, Belize, wherever, we can't get together and do business together? Come on, y'all, really? When that's what we used to do before the colonizer came out of the Caucasus Mountains? That whole history when he came out of the Caucasus Mountains, right? When we put him when the Moors put him in the Caucasus Mountains with General Mukmuk, right? We owned the camels. They walking cable toes, crossing the burning sands into the Caucasus Mountains. Lost 2,000 years of their history when they was crawling on all fours. Then we came and saved them again gave them knowledge, got them out of them living in them and digging out dugouts in the sides of caves, built castles and roads, and taught them medicine and science, put them back on their feet, put a harness on their back so they could be standing straight up at a 90-degree angle, right? What we've done, right? And this is the thanks we get. Well, of course, because he can only be who and what he was created to be. It's your fault. It's our fault. Because we asking too much out of white people. They can't do for you what you asking them to do. It's impossible, man. Why you think the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Messengers Farrakhan keep telling you, do for self, do for self. You gotta do for self. Do for self. You gotta do for self now. Now look. You have to do for self in the confines under the universal laws that govern all of us, right? Because as I stated, we can't out devil him, and he can't out guard us, right? So you got to do for self in that frame, right? That way you building something not only for yourself, but for your children and your children's children's children on down the line. So when you pass, when you going away from here, you no longer, you got generations that steady building. As I stated before, I don't know if real reincarnation is real or not, but if it is, you want to make sure you build something and you teach something to your future generations coming up in case you do reincarnate. You reincarnate in something good. You ain't reincarnate in a shack somewhere with no electricity, no running water, or no, you know what I mean? But you would get that if you ain't putting nothing into yourself, into your children, into their children to build and keep it going, right? Now, there's one thing you gotta understand this as well, right? We're getting ready to close, right? This is nothing you gotta understand, right? As you start to grow and build and build and build, you're going to create enemies. And you're going to create people who don't want you to grow and build. And they're going to sit back and try to find a way to stop you. They're going to do it through propaganda. They're going to do it to have one side of town beef against another side of town. They will go as far as to inject one of their own into what you're doing to make you think they cool with you just because they white. And their whole mission is to go in and dismantle everything you put together. They're going to go in and do a recon. They're going to know, they're going to learn your slang. They're going to learn what you do, how it's being done. And they're going to be relaying that message back over to their people. And if you notice, as time progresses, you're going to start noticing things going to start changing. That way life's going to be started. It's going to be obsolete in time. And you're going to be sitting back saying, man, I remember we used to make this money. I remember when things used to happen like this. And I remember we used to, man, what happened? Right? But they injected that damn spy. They injected one of their own, right? That Trojan horse. Right into the mix of what you got, right? And it's no more. And the funny part about it is, the one that they injected into your mix don't even know he ain't privy to the whole plan and plot of what they got going on. He just tool too. He don't know. But he started noticing though, he started looking around like, wait a minute, he ain't dumb. Damn, everything I went back and reported back to them, this hurting black folks, they getting rid of it. They learning how we say, look, they started learning how we was selling out the trunk, making money off the music, right? What they do, we gonna get Napster, we gonna start streaming, take away that money. Why? Because they didn't like what we was doing with the money. We was too, it's like back in the day with the old Cadillac, right? Black man worked hard, right? Saved. Got him enough money to buy him a Cadillac, and as soon as he hit that street and that Cadillac cruising, boy, they hated, they planted dope on it, they killed, they hung some of them, they tore up their car because they couldn't stand to see what you outshining them with the creativity that you were utilizing with the money that you made. They hated that. They couldn't stand it. It's just like when Frank Lucas showed up to the boxing match in that chinchilla, right? And they who wait whoa who was that nigga in that chinchilla? And it shows you it goes even further back than that. And Django, right when Django showed up at the plantation riding on the horse, and Samuel was playing the old slave. What this nigga doing on that nag? Right? Saying it's been going on so long, man. And it shows you that the black person with the colonized mind, right? That's how you know how deep slavery ran in your family. Because if you see a black man and something nice, and you look and say, man, what this nigga doing? Or you just get something in you that offends you, that's slave blood, man. You gotta get that out of there. That's slavery. You know, if you see somebody doing it, and you say, man, look at that nigga. Because he spend money, that's his money. That's her money. That's that slave blood run deep in you. But if you see somebody who see you and they be like, oh man, that's a blessing, man. Congrats, man. I like what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. That means they family never was in slavery, or they fought that slave gene long time ago, right? Because the black native, real black natives, didn't want nothing. I mean nothing from the colonizer. They didn't want his language. They didn't want his religion. They didn't want his diet. They didn't want his woman. They would rather sit in the woods and deal with themselves before they took anything from the colonizer. They didn't want nothing from the colonizer, right? They didn't want no handout. I eat corn for the rest of my life if I take a handout from one of y'all. That's the mentality they had. I cut me down a tree and build my own damn. Don't give me, I don't want nothing. Because they know that this was once they land, and now you took it, and now you want to turn around and come back and give me some crumbs. And you know, it don't work like that. Okay, so that's the thing. Right? So look, African Americans, Moors, Filipinos, black natives, black melanated people. Because to show you that, because melanated skin is the oldest skin on the planet, right? Oldest skin, melanated, right? And then from that, black man and woman comes everybody else, and we all know that. So black people, hold your head up, knowing that you were the first beings on the planet, and then match the God knowledge that matches that sentiment, not the colonizer's knowledge about God. He ain't know nothing about God. His whole purpose of even getting into religion was through the war. He was tired of the money that it was costing, going into all these wars and these different dramatic tribes, to where he was like, look, man, we gotta create something that put everybody under one banner, and we can rule them through the religion. And they created that Christianity. It was a sense to control, to rule everybody through this religion, and everybody got their part to play. And in Christianity, if you black or melanated, you got a part to play. You're gonna play the servant. If you white in Christianity, you're gonna play the master, the overseer, the one who dictates. And we're gonna put it, and we're gonna construct it and put it all in a book titled Bible. And when you read it, because the symbolism and how we put it out in society, subconsciously you're gonna know your role. And when we put it in this book and we give it to society, the melanated people gonna automatically know their role to play as servants, and then the colonized people, Caucasian Europeans, they gonna know what role they supposed to play within that book, and sing and go forth, and everybody play their role, right? But what happened? What messed the plan up? Master Prophet Muhammad came July 4th, 1930, with a different knowledge, supreme knowledge, Then he taught them about what they called UFOs and had them wondering where did he get his knowledge from. Now they looking, trying to study what he had, while you over here holding on to what he gave you when he gave the knowledge to black people for free. First, I'm giving you this knowledge first for you to learn and understand who you are, and you to learn and understand who he is. And then you act accordingly to who you are. And that's what we doing. So, hey, it is what it is. Bro Pick Radio. We out.